right, be proud of this. This is just step one. This is just step one. We're on to bigger and better now. Proud of you guys. Love you all. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Win. Put that jello on.
All right, folks, we are back, friends who ramble. It is a power ranking tier episode. It is also, I guess, the last official episode of the 2024 season. We have our champion Slippery Pete on to discuss his win, discuss his season, and also to stick on and power rank with us. I feel like that was the more appropriate use of a championship appearance to kind of have them come on and give their opinion on the other 11 teams in the league as well as themselves, in terms of outlook moving forward. But we have Amaral on, as we always do for the power ranking episodes as well. Before we get into everything, we are brought to you by our two sponsors, starting with Sundog Multimedia. Sundog is an online communication and social media company. What started as a personal tool has since evolved into something much bigger, allowing users to communicate, research, and discover things that impact their lives and daily decisions. Sundog will collaborate with you to build and execute a modern yet nimble social media strategy by utilizing innovative and traditional media principles. Sundog is also a proud supporter of the Stop Soldier Suicide Foundation. You can follow them on Instagram at Sundog_multimedia. That's Instagram at Sundog_multimedia. Brains, brawn, and true professionalism, that's easy peasy moving and service. Muscle for hire, moving, assembly, errands, you name it, they will do it. Easy peasy is a multi-service team. If you need something, just ask. All right, like I said in the intro, it is the 2024 season finale, I guess you could say. We are joined by Amaral, as we always do, for the power rankings, and we also brought in our current champion, Slippery Pete. Of course, I was trying to figure out how I wanted to balance it, and I think in years past we had done sort of a championship preview with both participants in the championship game, but then we also ran it back with the champion the next week. That felt a little redundant to me, and also with our new recording schedule, I felt like it figured out. It felt a little bit better to just have you come on after that, but let me be the first to officially say to you on air, congratulations, Pete. You did set out to do what you said you would do. You won a championship. You did it within the first 5 years of our league. I do feel like that is quite an achievement that you can put on your resume. I mean, I'm not saying this. I have heard people compare it to, Ohio State potentially winning the championship this year, where, they had lost to Michigan earlier in the season, and some people say that it almost doesn't matter if they win this year because they lost the game to Michigan. And I will point out that you did lose to me in the regular season. Some people were saying I had your feet on the headboard in that weekly matchup. And then you also were outscored by me in the championship week. So, I'm not one of those guys that plays the hypothetical, oh, if I did this, I would have won. If I did that, I would have won. I'm just kind of relaying what I've been hearing. I'm here to spread narratives and then just talk about, what the league's been saying. But, it was still an impressive win, right? I mean, a couple of years ago, you were one of the worst teams in the league. I think that maybe you've kind of been passed by McMorrow in terms of all-time bad rankings. I mean, you did win sort of in a year. I mean, it was, like I said, year 5. It's the final year, I think, of era 1. That's kind of how I'm viewing it. I don't think people will look too kindly on that first era of championships. Of course, you have the McMorrow one at the very beginning where nobody really knew what they were doing. 2 pins nobody cares about. There was the DeMar Hamlin championship. And then, I think you get into a little more respectable championships when you talk about the Zits, and then, of course, with Slippery Pete's. But, of course, mentioning the Zits, you were going against a team that was pushing for a second consecutive championship. We've never seen that done. And then he was also coming off of a massive 160-point week. So I do feel like the numbers might have been in your favor anyways. Like, I think statistically, a lot of people would have been at an advantage. But you did win. You are the league champion. That's something that a lot of people cannot say. Personally, I can't say it. Amaral can't say it. I will pass the mic to you and give you your chance to, gloat and rub it in all of our faces, or, maybe, you'll take the humble approach. I'm not really sure how you're going about it. But, for those of us let's just pretend that none of us watched that video. I'm sure all of us did, but for those of us that missed out, maybe give us a little bit of a taste.
Yeah, first off, I just want to shout out the pod. Love what Benny Fazio has done with the show. Shout out Amaral, Wallace, George. Everyone's been great on the pod. I love where the show's at, and it's been a pleasure to watch. So, shout out the pod. Appreciate the content. It's what makes this, it's one of the reasons this league is great. Fellas, I said in the video, you don't know how much this means to me. You literally can't comprehend how much this means to me. Like, the amount of time, blood, sweat, and hours I put into this championship is truly disgusting. Like borderline, put this guy in a mental hospital because he is up till 4 a.m. watching Dynasty Nerds Film Room on Puka Nakua at BYU in 2021. It means oh my God, I get so fired up. I get so fired up still just talking about it. It is truly, truly my biggest accomplishment in my 27 years on this earth. And I don't care what you think about that. It meant so much to me, and I did it. I fucking did it. I did everything I said I was going to do, and backed it all up on the paper. I get speechless sometimes thinking about it. I wake up in the morning, even a week removed, and I'm just like, no, I'm a Friends Who Gamble champion. I'm a Friends Who Gamble champion. It is truly, truly, it is truly one of the best accomplishments of my life, and I cannot understate that enough. Like to be, I felt like I really was the first to commit to a rebuild. Some people say Mikey kind of turned it around after the first year or something like that, but I think that's kind of a Fugazi rebuild. I was truly the first one to tear it all down, call my shot in 2021, and then back it all up and win a championship in 2024. It is the best championship won in this league, bar none, not even close. I think it is truly, truly an amazing story to go out on your own with no one believed in you. No one believed in you. You call it the vision. You get a lot of fanfare. You're talking on the show. You're talking on the mic. It's all blah, 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 just nonsense out of Pete. But he backed it all up. He backed it all up with the crown on his head now. And you can't take that away. Can't take that away. Banners fly forever. I am on the moon about this victory. And I will not take the humble approach. I will not take the humble approach. I worked hard for this. I grinded for it. I made it happen. I said it was going to happen, and it did happen. And I'm not taking the humble approach. I'm going to take my victory lap throughout the entire year. And then maybe when I win my second one, I'll take a humble approach after that. But it's feeling great right now. I'm feeling on top of the world. It's a sweet, sweet victory, and I'm going to enjoy it. I'm going to enjoy it.
All right. In other news, this past week, the league, we added Frank Hopkins to the league. We officially kicked the Vibers out of the league. I haven't spoken to Igor yet. I haven't talked to him at all. I'm not sure if I'm ever going to talk to him again. I feel like that's more on him if he wants to reach out to me or not. But I don't know I don't know how he feels about it. I don't know if there's even any reaction. I talked to some people in the league where, I had noticed that he hadn't even viewed the league chat at any point in the playoffs, so he wasn't even checking in. So, I felt like that made it kind of an easy boot. We did bring Frank Hopkins into the league. I think that's going to be a great addition. I think that anybody that follows him on Twitter probably agrees with me there. So we brought him in, and then we also split the league. As we voted on last year from. Three divisions into two conferences. So now there is the Gay Son Conference and the Thought Daughter Conference. The Gay Sons, that is, of course, Sfogliatella, Big Brain LLC, TussockyGnome, which is Frank Hopkins' team. The Slow Stroke Kings, Lamar and the Zits, and Joshy and the Shits. The Thought Daughter Conference is Two Pins, Slippery Pete, I Love My Mom, McMorrow's team. I still need to figure out, a verbal name. I'm not really sure what to call his team yet. GEAUXTIGERS, because Mikey misspelled his team name after he renamed it that. I forget that whole bizarre thing. And the Most Athletic Sons. Amaral, we'll start with you. Any reaction to the conference split up? Any insight or any thoughts and feelings towards the addition of Frank Hopkins or the exile of the Vibers? And then we'll swing it over to you as well, Pete. Amaral,
Okay, yeah, couple questions. Th Was that not a mutual parting of ways? That was just the commissioner giving the boot?
that's where I'm really not sure because I never really had like a true conversation with him where it's like, hey man, let's it's been a good run, all that. It was very just hostile. It was in the chat. I think most of the talks that went on were very public. I think most notably the conversation that was had in the chat after the, I'd dub it infamous, Travis Kelce, Blake Corum trade. So after that, that's kind of where the tone was set, where it's like, all right, I mean, we can't have you back. You just have like, you're the occasional vibers. You have terrible vibes. I mean, you're barely active in the league. You're nowhere to be found. We can't have people that are like, sort of pompous about like, oh, it's February, it's March. Relax. We don't need to be trading right now. I mean, we don't need that attitude in this league. That's not what this league's all about. So that's just not a culture fit. So, I feel like I made it clear enough. I think I said it enough times that this would be their final season. So, if they are shocked, I think that's on them. I don't know if they're trying to call my bluff or anything, but I do think that it was made clear enough that it shouldn't be much of a surprise. I also just think that regardless, Frank is just a much better fit. I think we needed sort of like a catalyst, an injection into this league, somebody that's, more on the degenerate side. And I think that Frank kind of fits in with that group. And which I think myself is very much included in. So I do not mean that in any sort of derogatory way. But yeah, I think that it was also just we wanted to bring somebody in that was more of a fit for what we were trying to get towards. So yeah, I don't know. I just kind of went with it, and yeah, I don't know if you thought that I was gonna like pussy out and like I was too nice to do it, but they're gone. They're gone. That's all we got. Did you have another? Did you say you had a couple things or?
Yeah. I had one more on the playoff format. So I think two, if we're doing it, obviously 6 teams in the playoffs, 2 buys, I think that 2 conferences makes a lot more sense than the 3 divisions.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to that. My question is, the remainder of the playoff teams, so the 4 wild cards, that's all going to be points based. So you could have 5 teams make it from one division.
No, so I guess that's maybe something that we could have an official vote on. I am definitely campaigning for this to be the format because this is kind of the direction I want to take the league in. And I feel like in the last year or two, we've really gotten away from wins meaning anything. I feel like people got too complacent. Like if they lost but they scored a bunch of points, they were like way too okay with that. And going into that last week where I needed to put up a good week to get in. So, I don't think that I come from any sort of biased place. If anything, it kind of goes against what I needed, even though I do think I still ended up winning because I put a pretty big week. But I didn't like going into that week and just needing to score a bunch of points. I kind of think that it's more entertaining, it's more fun if somebody could maybe go into week 14 and they need to win to get in and they lose to Simcoe's team this year or McMorrow's team, and those teams can play spoilers, and actually losing a game like that matters. Angelo went out and put up 55 points, which still hurt him, but they also lost the Suns to McMorrow's team, and I just feel like that didn't sting enough. I want stuff like that to sting. So what I'm proposing, and like I said, we can't have a vote on it. I've talked to I'd say about half the league already, and I think that they're on board. So I'm confident that it'll pass as well. But what I want to do is I want to have the top 4 seeds are the top 2 teams from both conferences record wise. So conferences are sorted by wins. The top team in each conference gets the first round bye. The second team in each conference gets an automatic bid, and then the 5 and the 6 seed would be the 2 remaining teams that scored the most points. So that's what I'm proposing. I think that makes puts a little bit more weight back into the meaning of the win. But at the same time, if you score a bunch of points, you're probably going to win those games. And if not, hopefully you are still a top 6 team in that regard. And you should still, be able to get in. But I think that that'll cause for a little bit more parity. It'll make things matter a little bit more. And, like in an instance like this, I think we would have seen like Big Brain sneak into the playoffs. And I just feel like that can add a little bit more interesting for Wrinkle and maybe give us a little more of an underdog story there. Instead of needing to win a bunch of games just to win the division, I feel like, having that could, get more teams to sneak in and maybe go on more of a Cinderella run. But I don't know. What do you think of that? I don't know if I've talked to you about that.
You have not, but I'm 100% in favor of that. So I'm a fucking sick bastard, and I'm commissioner of 4 different leagues. So like, who the fuck does that? But so each of them are 12 teams, and I think this is the 4th year now where my playoff format has been very similar to that. I don't do conferences or divisions, but I do it so the four best teams make it record wise, regardless of what their records are. Those top four teams are in, and then the final two are wild cards based on points scored throughout the year, regardless of record. And I think two or three of the years, including this year, a team that would not have been in, like for example, in one of my leagues this year, somebody was 6-8. I think he finished like in eighth place in the standings, but he had the fifth most points scored. He got into the league and he made a run to the championship round. And so like if I just did top six, like a normal league, he would have missed the playoffs. So yeah, I'm fully in favor of this. And it's pretty similar to what I'm doing in my leagues as well. So I love it. Definitely have my vote on that.
Yeah, and I think it's a good middle ground. In the my redraft league, it's like all record, and I feel like that just kind of screws a couple teams over, and it gets like actually shitty teams in. But yeah, I think making top four records matter. Those four teams should be at least halfway decent, and even if that causes a lesser team to sneak in over a better team, usually one of those better teams you think would still be able to claim that wild card spot. Pete, I've talked to you about this. I believe you've said that you'd be in favor of that as well. It's really not a huge drastic change because when we were at the divisions, it was still top three records in those divisions that were making it in. So we're only adding one more team that gets in based off of wins and then taking away a points for a wild card spot. But I don't know if do you have any additional thoughts on or suggestions towards playoff format or really anything. I think that we are still open to whatever. I don't think that we're quite locked into anything. Of course, like the only rule changes have really been that, and then the half point per receiving first down. But Pete, you got anything?
Yeah, I mean, no Jalen, no CD, still put up 140. Never mind, we already did that. We already did that. I love it. I think anyone who's crying about this, Benny Fazio has led us to be arguably the best fantasy league on the planet. He's
True.
never steered us in the wrong direction, even though I fought him tooth and nail every step of the way. We are where we are because of decisions like these. And have a little faith. Have a little faith that it's going to work out because I think it's going to. I looked back at last year. I think the only change would have been me and Wallace flopping 4 and 3 seed if we had this format last year, if that makes sense, like record wise. So like,
Yeah.
it doesn't change a ton. The outcome still would have been the same. So it really doesn't change a ton, but it also adds so much more uh, pressure to win, and it's going to drive. I think it's going to drive league controversy. If I know I'm going into a fight with the Zits or whoever, like during like a I don't know week 10 in the play in like the regular season, that just adds so much more to that matchup. Now I'm texting Bowen on the side. Now I'm in the league chat coming down to the wire. I don't if we're in a 130 to 129 game and I got one player on Monday night, I don't really care. I put up 130. I'm good. I'm in the points for category. I'm chilling. Now I'm watching that game. Now I'm locked in. Now I'm texting Bone on the side. Now I'm in the league chat. It's going to drive more competition amongst the teams without necessarily changing the result by that much. So I think it's a home run. If you're crying about it, I don't think you know what you're talking about. I love the move. I'm all for it.
So I think you're right. I think I like the point about kind of the week to week aspect. Like the head to head part of fantasy is really a large part of what makes it so fun. So
Yeah.
to add that back in, but still having points matter, and not having the record be the be all end all, I think is like super important. I think it's going to be a good change.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we were kind of getting too best bally, where it was just like go out, put up a bunch of points, and yeah, exactly. Like if you put up a bunch of points and you lose, you could still kind of look at the silver lining and say, well, you know what, that still adds to my wild card resume, anything like that. And then it's one loss anyways. It's not going to absolutely tank your season, but yeah, exactly like you were saying, Pete. Like I want people to like get clowned because they lost. Like
Yeah.
I feel like we kind of clowned Angelo because he put up like 55 points, but like it really wasn't a huge deal that he lost to McMorrow because he
Right.
already put up like, not that many points. So it was like, well, that's bad enough. Who cares that he lost? So yeah, I kind of want to bring that back and yeah, just get more shit talking. I mean, I think kind of the turning point for me was honestly when I beat Mike Bowen this year. I texted him kind of in that same, spirit where I was just kind of talking shit, and he was like, "Eh, whatever. I still put up a decent amount of points," and
Right.
that made me sick. It made me sick. Like I was like, he doesn't care at all. I mean, first of all, Mike Ballwerlick is like 10th favorite league anyways, so he really didn't care regardless. But yeah, it was just like the fact that like that couldn't sting him at all. Like I couldn't get through to that at all. That really just bothered me. So yeah, I just wanted to add that, and then yeah, I think that's kind of everything I got for housekeeping. I mean, other things. The trade market will open February 1st, the start of Black History Month. Every year, we will honor our Black brothers and sisters by opening the trade market and getting deals done. And then getting business done. That's what it's all about. We are now in the legal tampering period. So you can go on to the Sleeper app. You can build your trades. You can put screenshots together. I think that's kind of my favorite part. I will say I'm still waiting on some screenshots from maybe both people on this call, but it's whatever. I'm trying to talk some trades. So that's all. I'm just getting a little giddy. All right. I can't really think of anything else. I feel like I had something else in my mind, but I've kind of gotten away from that. Are you guys ready to go over and do the power rankings?
Let's run it.
All right, let's see. Share.
You're muted, Emerald.
You guys watching this game?
Yeah.
The defense bowl.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of opened up a little bit here now, but
Oh yeah, the Notre Dame touchdown was like
yeah, that was wild.
two people might have been playing defense. I don't even know.
Future Sfogliatella member Nicholas Singleton really balling out tonight. Love to see that.
What a call! What a call!
I'm listening. All right, you guys can see the tiers.
Yep.
All right, so yeah, I just got I got all the pictures uploaded. I figured we can kind of start blank tiers. Kind of figure it out from there. Pete, I'll let you lead it off.
All right, I'm gonna go straight to the top, and I'm gonna put the Zits in the first spot of the S tier.
Wow. All right. Wait, that's the. I will say something that's still fucking me up is the Zits and the Shits. It's not the Zits and the Shits that are fucking me up. It's the Lamar and the Joshy in the name.
Yep.
It's still
Yeah.
fucking me up. I'm still going when I see Lamar. I still go to the Shits. Because the Shits came from the fact that Lamar gets a fucking bellyache and poops his pants, and then I'm still used to Joshy being on the Zits. So it's still messing me up. But all right, we're gonna put the Zits up top. You got any insight into that? What I feel like that's more of a mental game play between you and Bowen. Everybody's it's peachier, it's this and that. Are you just trying to maybe like curse his team or anything, or do you genuinely feel like the Zits are the number one team going into next year?
No, I genuinely feel like they're the number one team. I mean, they what Bryce did down the stretch kind of sealed it for me. I think he can be either a very good QB3 for him, but we've seen Zach just dominate this league for 2 years. Like I beat him in the championship. He was in the championship last year. He makes the moves every offseason he needs to. I think he's going to sure up that quarterback room over the offseason. Maybe I'm projecting a little bit, but more I just every player on his roster, I see them repeating their performance or getting better. He's a lot deeper than I am. I know I clown depth sometimes, but
That's crazy.
yeah, I know. But I genuinely think that he has me beat at quarterback right now, and that's why I've got him ahead of me. I think he's going to make the moves that he always makes every season. He seems to figure it out. He's been dominating this league for 2 years. So if I've got to put my life on one team to win the chip next year, it's the Zits. And I mean that genuinely, not a mental game.
So I'm going to push back on that just a little bit, and it's really not. I don't disagree with you, but I'm going to bump them down to the second tier, and I think I'm going to hold pretty firm on where they're at as far as like I might gatekeep if we try to put too many teams over them, because I really might only have one team, maybe two, over them. But I feel like they kind of belong in the second tier solely because I don't really know what that roster is going to look like next year, and I feel like me, him, I don't know, Pete. I actually wouldn't put you in that category. Obviously, you did do your massive overhauls, with your picks and then turning that into players. But Bowen and I are two guys that we can really turn over our roster like a restaurant. And I don't know who's going to be on his team. He's been talking about trading Saquon and Terry McLaurin and basically anybody but like Bryce and Amon-Ra and Jamison Williams. I think he's willing to trade. And I do think that there have been thoughts that have crept into his head about, maybe just going for, trading in for like picks or, going for youth or anything like that. But I do know that Bowen likes to, always be in the mix and always compete. So I don't think he's ever going to really truly commit to that. But just for the fact that we don't really know what that roster is going to look like, I highly doubt that half of his starting lineup from the championship is even on his team next year. I'm going to put them at that number in that 2 tier. And, I'd probably, if I had to blind rank, I'd probably put them at 2, just to be safe. But I'm going to put them there for now. Amaral, how do you feel? Do you side more with me or Pete?
Okay, I'm a little confused now. Are we doing this like looking ahead just for 2025, or are we still talking about this 5-year outlook?
I think I think focus is maybe like 75% next year and then 25% in the future. That's kind of how I'm looking at it. Like, I just because I think a team might be really good in 5 years, they might suck right now. So I don't
Mhm.
necessarily want to take that over a team that I think could win. So I'm still kind of leaning towards the more current good teams than maybe the ones 4 or 5 years down the road.
Okay.
Okay,
I thought we were just locked in on next year. I got it now.
in that case, though, if I'm breaking the tie, I have Bowen in the top tier.
All right, we can put them there. We can put them there. I will say though, I'm warning you. I still think that they're going to be competitive. I just think that if you're basing your judgment off of the roster now, I feel like that's the wrong outlook. I think that if we're investing in the owner and not the roster, then I can get more behind that.
That's fair. I mean, he has good pieces now. Like we'll see. There's like no way to predict what's going to happen. A lot changes throughout the year, so I'm sure we'll do this again, before the season, a couple times before the season. But as of right now, on January 9th, I have him as S tier.
All right, Emerald, I guess I can let you go second. Is there anybody that you want to have join in that S tier, or do you want to go? I guess we could kind of go anywhere that we want. We don't necessarily have to go top to bottom. Is there any team that you want to call out right now?
Um, so I was gonna put Big Brain at the very bottom if we were doing like a 5-year outlook. But yeah, I think they're somewhere between C and D. If we're kind of, I think they're probably still D. Like there are some major question marks on that team. I think it's gonna bottom out really quickly.
I'm down to put them in the D tier for now, and then if we want to put teams below them, we always can. Like we can always, but just to get faces on the board, I'm down to put them there because I kind of agree with you. Just as far as that 5-year outlook, but also, I mean, are we sure that they're really that great or even mid? When we're talking about a short-term outlook either, because they've gone down every single season, and I know that they had McCaffrey get injured this year, but that's just shit that happens. I mean, those running backs are getting older. They don't really have much of an answer at quarterback. They seem to get a short-term boost from Russell Wilson, but it looks like maybe he is starting to fade back into, what we've seen more of, in his post-Seattle career. Um, but I mean, that's just a team. I mean, even like George Pickens was looking like a bright spot and looked like he had an opportunity to become, that next, great alpha receiver in the league. But, he seems to be a bit of a head case, and I'm not sure that he's going to last too long on Pittsburgh. And, there is a history of just kind of fading the guys that Pittsburgh tends to stay away from. I mean, Deontay Johnson, he was coming off of a solid year and he was playing really well. For the first half, down in Carolina, especially when Andy Dalton came in and, they needed an offensive boost. He stepped up and he was putting up great games. But then look what ended up happening, right? I mean, he was kind of a malcontent, in his final year in Pittsburgh and, it kind of seemed to show up again where it didn't seem like he wanted to stick around at Carolina. And then he went to Baltimore, and that absolutely did not work out. And then he ended up in Houston, and we'll see how that turns out. But I mean, it doesn't seem like a good track that you want to be on when that's kind of the stuff that's going on when teams really don't want to keep you around. So, if Pickens turns into another receiver that Pittsburgh wants to move on from, that's definitely going to stand out to me. And I mean, even the way that he faded last week, and he was talking all this shit, and then he drops like a million balls. He catches like one of his like 6 or 7 targets, gets no yards. He's just not looking like that consistent player that I think people were relying on him to turn into this year. So it's like even with that being a bright spot, Big Brain still had, I think, their worst year in their history in this league. That continues their trend of just going down, down, down every season. So I think long term, it's a brutal outlook, and I think even short term, they're still one of the bottom teams in the league. And I think that if we're talking about teams that, if we were just starting today and picking a team to take over, they're definitely one of the last picks that I would make. So, yeah, I'd put them down there. I mean, Pete, the guys. I think all of us have talked plenty about Big Brain and our opinions on where they are. Where do you have them on these tiers?
I'd have them in the F tier, even leave E just open. I genuinely think they're that bad. The worst team that you'd adopt in Friends Who Gamble right now. They're full of old heads, and I think what a lot of people are sleeping on is McMurrow owns so many picks this year and next year that typically when a team wants to rebuild, they sell the old guys for first round picks. But McMurrow's not going to be interested in those old guys. He has a different timeline. So I don't think the market's going to be there for them to unload Debo, McCaffrey, Nick Chubb, James Conner. Like, I don't think they can get first for these guys. So I genuinely think that they're going to have to do it the hard way and like wait until 26, 27, 28 to like rebuild their team just based off their own picks. So I don't think they're going to have the market to turn this roster over, and I think it's going to be 3 to 4 rough years for Big Brain.
I actually think it's fitting that we rank these two teams first with the Zits and then Big Brain. And also just the fact that we put one team on the very top and one team on the very bottom, because I think they're kind of two sides of the same coin in the sense where there are two teams that very much want to go out and compete every year. They do not want to go into a season kind of sitting back and saying, yeah, I'm going to suck right now, but hopefully in a year or two, my players step up and all of a sudden I can turn into something. It's that Bowen is always going to be able to find and churn through and cycle through those players, to get the ones that compete, where Big Brain, they just don't have the drive
Nope.
that the Zits have. Even with 3 heads together, I'm not sure that they have the knowledge necessary to play that style either. I just don't think that they're competitive enough mindset wise to really go for that. So I think if they wanted to take a more passive approach, that's when you can try and make those deals. But I think they're already, like you were saying, Pete, past that window of opportunity to really cash in. I mean, I don't really know who's buying a guy like Nick Chubb or Debo Samuel for anything. I mean, not even if other teams did have those first, I don't think Big Brain's getting first for those players right now anyways. No. I think that those are ones where they got to try and get maybe a couple second rounders from future drafts, not even this upcoming draft. If they want to start building that team out and then getting more opportunities to get younger. But yeah, I just don't really see how they're gonna do it. So yeah, at this moment, I don't know. Maybe as we talk through it, there might be a team that I want to put below them. But like you were saying, Pete, if we were doing a draft of teams to take over, I mean, it's just they're the least desirable ones. So, all right, moving on. Let's see. I think it's my turn. Who do I want to go with? I mean, I feel like it's an easy one. I'm gonna go with Pete. I'm gonna put him. I don't know. I mean, you guys seem pretty adamant that Bowen's like the very best team. I mean, I think Pete's right there. I mean, Pete obviously has the team that just won. And I think that the one true criticism, and even though he overcame it, I still think that it's a fair criticism, is that he did not have much depth. Obviously, he was able to overcome that, down the stretch in the postseason. But that really took things, just going perfect, and we saw that, right? I mean, Pete, I think you can even say for yourself, right, when you were going in, you're like, holy shit, like I gotta like start like Joe Flacco, and in like an important playoff game. I don't think you were necessarily feeling your best going into those situations, but you were still able to overcome that, and ultimately it didn't matter. But I think that now you have the ring. And that doesn't necessarily matter for these rankings, but you have a team that we know can win, and I think you also kind of can come out of this with some notes of, okay, well, I don't necessarily want to just run it back exactly the same. There are still areas for me to improve, so I think that you are going to be working the phones, and I think that you're going to be able to fill your roster out. You do have that 2026 first that you can play with, and you do have some top tier star talent that I think you can try and split up and, maybe, add a little bit more depth to your team and just be, a little more versatile throughout the season just in case. But I mean, I'm still going to put you at the top. If you guys want to have Bowen first, that's fine. I'm still going to put you in that S tier. I mean, if you guys want to try and talk me down, I don't know how passionate you feel about talking your own team down, Pete, but that's where I have you. Still in the top tier. If you guys want to call it second, that's fine by me. I don't know if there's any pushback there.
I'm gonna do something crazy here. Now that we're in the weeds and I'm looking at it and I'm looking at these rosters, I'm gonna jump ship off my literally first pick. I had the pick of the litter and put the Zits to the 1-1. I don't see it anymore. I don't see it anymore now that we're in the weeds. I'm taking my team over Bowens for sure. And I honestly, there might be a team above them too. So like I'm right now. I think I'd have me above the Zits, and I could put the Zits as maybe the third team in the S tier or the first team in the A. But I'm changing my tune from my first pick. You've talked me into it, KB.
So I'm gonna go. So you re-broke the tie.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna move Bowen down like I originally wanted. I think that, like I said, I'm gonna kind of gatekeep when it comes to any teams that we want to try and put above them. I'll kind of, I'll be like the bouncer. I'll say yes or no. But I mean, I do think that Bowen belongs in that second tier, but I think we should give him a very complimentary tier name because, like I said, we just actually don't know what that roster is going to look like.
Yeah.
A month from now or 6 months from now. So I think it's hard to just be like, yeah, you know what, that's the definitive number one team. But like I said, I'm more willing to invest in the owner than in the roster, and knowing that Bowen's going to want to compete and knowing the talent that he has to trade. I still think that he's going to turn that into a competitive roster, but I think it's just a little harder to tell with his team compared to some of the others because of that. So, we'll come up with the tier names after, but yeah, I mean, Pete, I still have you number one. I don't really see much of a reason to knock you off. I do feel like in years past, we've been a little lazy with that. We haven't wanted to be proactive. A team like Two Pins, we kind of held on to them in the top tier for, weeks too long when we knew that they didn't have it. But I think in the future, I'm going to be more willing to just talk a team down if I don't think they have the juice. But I mean, currently you still have the same roster that you just won with 2 weeks ago. And like I said, I think that you have the ability to make moves to make slight improvements. And, you're not, I don't think you're going to go out and make massive improvements. And I don't think that's a insult or anything. I think it's just the fact that you're already on the top that, like, you can only get so much bigger. It's like like the Biggest Loser. I don't know if you guys ever watched that growing up,
yeah.
but it's like, when they all weigh 400 pounds, they could lose 20% of their weight in like 2 weeks. But then as they start getting down to like 230 pounds, they can only lose, a smaller and smaller percentage. It gets a little bit harder. So it's like, the room for improvement gets a little more, marginal, but, I still think that you can come out of it and make those moves. So I have you on top, Amaral. I don't know if you have anybody else that you want to throw in there above Bowen, below Bowen. I know you had Bowen at the very top, but where do you stand on Pete's team when it comes to that ranking?
So in fairness, I would have had Bowen was just the first team to come up. I thought he belongs in that top tier. I thought it was a two-team tier with Pete number one and Bowen number two. So I think it's obviously easy to say that coming off what we just saw in the championship round, but I have no reason to believe that these teams won't be in the mix for a championship again next year. So I would have had Pete one, Bowen two, which is kind of what's reflected here, just in separate
Yeah.
tiers.
And I think they belong in separate tiers because of kind of everything I've been saying, where it's like I just feel like they're right there both at the top, but I think that they're in a little bit different positions. So I feel like we should make that distinction, and maybe those just end up being the top two tiers on their own, and then everybody else can kind of start in that B tier, and then however we name it. But Pete, you got anybody else you want to throw out there?
Yeah, I won't bury the lead anymore. But what the realization I just came to is Wallace belongs between. I Love My Mom belongs between me and Bowen. I have Wallace as the second team in the S tier. It's a wild that I got the pick of the litter and put the Zits first, and now got him at 3. But looking at Wallace's roster plus the draft capital he has, he's got a full set of picks plus additional seconds going forward, and we're looking at it at a 75% next year, 25% future lens. I didn't give enough credit for having guys like Tyreek Hill have just a shot season with Tua out, the Nico Collins injury. He's still going to, I mean, Derrick Henry just had the second best year of his career, and he's still coming back on another year with the Ravens. I think Breece Hall bounces back. I think Wallace got hit with a lot of injuries this year, and I didn't really click until now. But I've got Wallace the second team in the S tier between Zits and I.
Hmm. Hmm. That's interesting. That's interesting. That's not a
Especially
team
you
that
think about the three quarterbacks now, like what Bo Nix did last year. He's now got Trevor Lawrence to play with. Like he could tear down from Lawrence to a different QB3 and get some more draft capital or other RBs and running back or wide receivers. So I mean, I don't necessarily I can be swayed either way. It's somewhere in the top three, but Wallace is that third team for sure.
Hmm. That
In
is
my
interesting because I feel like Wallace was a team that was definitely fading at the end of the year. Of course, CJ Stroud did have that sophomore slump. Um, Stroud's a guy I wish I kind of just stood on the take a little bit longer. I think I waved the white flag because when he was in college, I was not a huge Stroud guy. I thought he was just absolutely miserable whenever he had to, scramble out of the pocket. And, he's definitely become much better with that. And he did put up an unbelievable rookie season, yardage wise. He did not put up a ton of touchdowns. I feel like a lot of people are kind of overlooking that. And then he came back this year and, he tried to little bro Caleb Williams, and Caleb Williams went on and had a better season than CJ Stroud did, but that's neither here nor there either. Yeah, I guess it's just kind of yeah. I'm looking at it and it's tough to tell. Of course, Derrick Henry, he seems like an ageless running back, so I'm not even going to try and do like the Max Kellerman, like every year is going to be the year that he falls off the cliff or anything like that. I do think that there are some questions to be answered as far as Brees Hall. He was, a top three running back 2 years ago, and then, this year was just kind of ass and a pretty bad offense. That's, I think going to go over a little bit of turnover. Aaron Rodgers probably isn't going to be back. Devontae Adams is likely going to be out. There's talks of Garrett Wilson getting traded. A new head coach coming in, a new GM coming in, and then he also has Braylon Allen on his heels, and Isaiah Davis was playing pretty well at the end too. So I think there's really it's tough to judge that Jets offense right now and really get a correct valuation on any of those Jets players. But Tyreek Hill kind of the same way, where he had a very down year. It sounds like I think I saw something that he broke his wrist in the preseason, and I know that he was claiming to aggravate a wrist injury when he got arrested, and then but even I'm looking at guys like Calvin Ridley. What the hell is going to be up with him? James Cook, he just put up. Did he just break the record or did he tie the record? The Bills single season touchdown record. That was a guy I traded away in the offseason because he didn't score touchdowns. He
Yeah.
was getting 1,000 yards. He was getting yards, no problem. He was never getting into the end zone, and he had a guy that was constantly taking those touchdowns in Josh Allen. And then all of a sudden, Josh Allen still got those touchdowns this year, and James Cook scored like twice the amount of touchdowns he had in the first 3 seasons, maybe even more than that. So it's like, I do kind of have some questions, but I do think that's a really good point when you bring up the draft capital. I did not really consider that, especially the fact that he has a full set, like you said, plus an additional two third round picks and the fourth round pick that we all just got added on to our inventory as well. So I think that's interesting. Amro, what do you think of this team? I guess I'm kind of still trying to process it because I was kind of looking at them from the lens of how they ended the season and it felt like they were kind of really starting to fade away. But I see the opportunity for a bounce back. I do think some of these veterans aren't as exciting as they were a year or two ago, but I can kind of be talked into this. Where do you have Wallace's team, Emerald?
I would have them a tier below Bowen. I
Only
would
two.
have them in tier B. I think, well, I mean, Wallace has a good team. I thought, like, I agree that, like, last year at this time, the team looked a lot better. Obviously, like, Tyreek's production, we couldn't really forecast that. I mean, it wasn't all Tua being out either. Like, that entire offense, other than Achan, was like, and Jonnu Smith down the stretch was, like, pretty shitty throughout the year. So it could be age catching up to him. Derrick Henry, of course, put up 2,000 yards. Like, I mean, he's second best season of his career or whatever. But it is bound to happen, like the fall off. So if because we're sort of balancing next year and the next 5 years, I think that's kind of why I have him here. Um, and then I guess I'll just kind of jump into the next team here. Put the commish here. But I think your team next year, I think. So I put you between on tier A just behind Bowen, and then a tier break, and
Damn,
then Wallace.
damn.
But I think you're kind of forgotten here, honestly, like in the championship conversation. Um, just with Jonathan Brooks being out like essentially all of next year as well. Like Chuba's going to come in as a top 15 running back. Brian Robinson should still have a good workload. Looks like Sam Darnold's going to be in Minnesota again. So like we saw what he could do in that scheme with those weapons. Kyler's a fine fantasy quarterback. I mean, like Devontae Smith, uh, you didn't even like start him, I don't think, in the playoffs. So I think you have a nice blend of some younger guys where like they're in their mid 20s and then some aging guys, Mike Evans, Adam Thielen that are still playing pretty well. So I think I would have you here. It's pretty close, but I think it warrants a tier break between you and Wallace. But I think it is a pretty close race between you two.
I like it. I mean, I'm flattered. Pete, what do you think of my team? I'm curious. I'd like to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously had Wallace above you, but you would have been the third team in the A tier for me. So if we put Wallace at S tier, you would have been behind Bowen in A. If I had my way, we put Wallace or one in A. You were the third team. You were the fourth team on my power rankings. The reason I've got you behind Wallace is just that Sam Darnold question. If he signed a contract tomorrow, long term with the Vikings, I would consider you bumping you up. But I think it's just that quarterback question. You don't have the draft picks that Wallace has. And it's just about Sam Darnold being locked in long term. I think this is still a quarterback league. And I'm just not ready to put you above those top three with that still being a question. I think a lot rides on how he plays these next two games. But I'm a Sam Darnold contract away from getting you above Wallace.
I will say, because one thing I was going to say about Wallace's team is, with the quarterbacks, like, I mean, I understand that Bo Nix just put up a fantastic rookie season. But I still feel like it's a lot of, and kind of his whole team is just, it's more name. I think he gets more of a bump from name value than my team does. I think that our teams are kind of neck and neck, but I think when people look at his roster, they see the names and they're like, oh, this team must be better. But then when you kind of dig into it, it's like, I think these teams are a bit equal. But I think when we're kind of projecting a little forward too, I mean, we just saw CJ Stroud set the rookie passing record and then come back and just be like, a sort of below average quarterback. And I mean, I've
Mid.
seen a lot of graphs this year where it looks like he's kind of lost a ton of his accuracy. He's not really hitting his receivers. He was struggling against things like too high coverage, which a lot of defenses were shifting towards this year. I don't want to just crown Bo Nix yet. I mean, I liked him. My whole draft analysis on him was that, kind of landing spot dependent, and the Rams and the Broncos with Sean Payton were kind of the two teams that I was like, if he goes here, I think I like him because that means that they kind of found their guy, and that's kind of what it seems like. But at the same time, I'm not ready to crown him after what we just saw happen to C.J. Stroud and then Trevor Lawrence. I mean, he was supposed to be, the next great NFL quarterback. And
He
he just really,
sucks.
yeah, he just hasn't been that. I mean,
He fucking sucks.
I still like, I'm still kind of looking at him with like the rose-colored lenses, where it's like, he's 6'6" and he has like a cannon arm. He's gonna turn it around like eventually. Just let him get the right coach. But it's like he's been through how many coaches? He's had all these different rosters, everything like that. And I understand that continuity is very important to that thing. But it's like, how many combinations do we need to try before we're like, I don't know if this is gonna work or not. And I know my guy first round mock. One of the craziest people I've ever seen in football Twitter. He hates Trevor Lawrence, and kind of the thing that he brings up is that Trevor Lawrence is a guy that's kind of like admitted he doesn't really care that much about football. Like, obviously, he cares enough to go out and play it and everything, but I don't think he's a guy that's like totally obsessed with it, like a Tom Brady or a Peyton Manning or anything like that. So, when I'm looking at huge investments and he got that massive contract, and if you're getting him on your dynasty team, that's kind of you're banking on him being that guy. I'm not ready to just kind of bank on him being that yet. So, I mean, we'll see what that coach turns into and everything like that. I don't think it's the most desirable coaching position right now, in the market, but we'll see who they end up hiring. But yeah, I mean, I understand it too. I'm kind of a little hesitant too until we see where Darnold goes. I think one thing that gives me confidence is that, I've heard Darnold himself say that, coaching and situation and roster is very important. That's why he went to San Francisco. I think that's also why he ended up in Minnesota. So I do think that he's going to try and be very smart, about where he goes when it comes to signing his next contract. I would prefer for it to be Minnesota, and maybe they move on from J.J. McCarthy. But, also at the end of the day, he's trying to be a starting quarterback. And, if a team with a good situation isn't offering him and a team with a bad one is, then maybe he's going to end up taking that because of the money and the starting quarterback money. So we'll see. So I do understand that hesitancy, but Yeah, when I look at my team, I mean, I love Drake London. I love Devontae Smith. Those are like two of my favorite receivers in the league. And, last year, I think a lot of people were pessimistic about Jordan Addison. They said, oh, he's touchdown dependent. A lot of his production came without Justin Jefferson in the lineup. Otherwise he's going to have to battle with him for touches. But now all of a sudden, a year later, he's getting the respect where it's like, this might be the best wide receiver duo in the league. And, they're definitely in that conversation. I'd say top 3 or 4 when you're talking about the best duos. So, being able to kind of round out a trio like that of my young receivers while having a guy like Mike Evans and a guy like Adam Thielen, who was low key balling out. He's been unbelievable. And then even like Michael Pittman, I think, I really think his back injury has been so understated this year. He really should have been on IR. I'm kind of counting this as a season that he just missed an injury. I am optimistic about him coming back, but yeah, I mean, I think I definitely have some work to do. I'd like to maybe mix up my running back room a little bit, but yeah, I mean, I like my roster coming back. I mean, I still like my starting lineup. I love my depth still, even adding guys like, Marvin Mims, who's been unbelievable down the stretch. I think Kayshon Boutte. I don't think that he's going to be, a great fantasy piece, but I still like the way that he ended the season. And then, I'll just say, don't sleep on Brenton Strange. I do think that he might step up in Jacksonville at some point. So we'll see. So, I mean, yeah, where do we kind of want to put my team? I mean, I feel like we're kind of in between. Should I go in this A tier right behind Bowen? Should I go in this B tier in front of Wallace? What do you guys think?
I had the A tier. I think like the top 3 teams in the league, the 3 teams that I would consider the favorites for next year, I think they deserve to be in the top 2 tiers. So I would have you on A and Wallace on B.
I can get behind it.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. Look at that. Look at how things have changed. I mean, 2 years ago, year and a half ago, people like couldn't, they were dying to buy my picks, but you know, I heard it. I heard it. All right. Who threw my team out there? Was that Amro? I guess I'm up.
Yes, it was. It
I
was
guess
me.
I'm up. All right,
Yeah,
let's
you're
see. I want to talk about McMorrow.
up.
I'm ready to get into it. Um, I think that he deserves a good ranking, but not too great. We still got to see what the stuff turns into. But I mean, I've kind of been sneaking in his praises for, this whole season where I'm kind of confident. I'm kind of confident that McMorrow is going to do a good job with this rebuild. I mean, he deserves a lot of credit for some of these hits that he's had when it comes to McMillan, Bucky Irving, who the hell else? He has other people. I don't know. He has other people, but he's had a few good undrafted. Tank Bigsby, Josh Downs, guys like that. Even like Malik Washington, I think is a guy that if Tyreek leaves Miami, which I mean, they're saying that he's in a good standing with them right now. They talked it through. I feel like especially with these wide receivers, where there's smoke, there's fire. But I do think Malik Washington, especially if Mike McDaniel remains the coach for another couple of years at least. I think that he's a guy that could also step up in that system. But I mean, even like a Garendo and Jalen Coker and Jalen Naylor and Dontavian Wicks. Like, I mean, these are guys who it's like we'll see what they can turn into. But I mean, the fact that he hit on those for third round picks, undrafted free agents, and he still has all of these first rounders. For this year and next year, he's got another second rounder to sprinkle in there, 2 second rounders, and a bunch of third round picks. I mean, he's got a lot to play with. I think that if he's wise, right, I don't think that he should try and just go overspend and then pay just for the sake of paying. And you know what, I have all these firsts. What's throwing in one more first just to get the deal done? Like he needs to still be smart with it. He can't over consolidate or anything like that. But just the fact that he's already hit on these picks before he's even or on these players before he's even had to make these picks, I do think alleviates that a little bit. Pete, I don't know if you have any insight into how McMorrow kind of wants to approach this draft season, whether he's going to try and stick and pick, or if he's going to be, trying to trade a bulk package or make moves on the clock. Maybe you can provide some insight on that. But I mean, I don't even know where I want to tier him. I think we can kind of talk it out. But I mean, I think McMorrow at least belongs somewhere in the middle. Pete?
I will say McMorrow is locked in. The guy is locked in. Anyone who thinks that he's not looking at the rookies, that he doesn't have a plan for the roster, that he isn't currently like planning which players he wants to buy this year is not tuned in with what McMorrow's doing. The guy's locked in, he's ready to go, and that does give me that same kind of confidence you were talking about, PB. I do think that his mind is in this game to pull off this rebuild. Um, and I got confidence in the kid. I got confidence in him. He's been, one of my buddies throughout this year or throughout this league, and I think he's locked in, ready to go. Tiering him is going to be tough though, because we're talking about like 75% next year, 25% down the road. We're balancing it out, so it's like I definitely would rather have his team than Big Brain, but Big Brain could absolutely put up more points than him next year, depending on what he buys. We just don't know right now. So if we're talking tier him, I got him above Big Brain. I like almost feel like we should make an F tier for Big Brain, put McMorrow in like D, and then because I think we're gonna run into the problem of like there's gonna be other players, other teams in the C tier that I can't have them in the same tier as McMorrow because they've got competitive rosters. Like I'm not having Amaral and McMorrow in the same tier. I just can't do that. So yeah, I think it's Big Brain down to F, and then we kind of give ourselves a little more wiggle room to tier McMorrow.
Yeah, I'm kind of picturing almost like, yeah, like I'm thinking like almost like a 10. And maybe he's 11, maybe he's 9.
Yeah,
But I'm almost picturing kind of where Amaral's team has been the last year or two, where it's like, they have the good rookies, or the good younger guys. I mean, Amaral, he was able to, I think build out a much more complete roster this year and be a little more competitive. But I think kind of being in that spot where it's like, you can kind of push and, you know that it's going to take absolutely perfect weeks for you to get that playoff spot, but you can at least put a scare into people, especially early in the season. I think that's where McMorrow, and I'm projecting a little bit. We got to see what these players turn into, but based on what I think, and then what I think he's capable of, and what I think he's going to do, yeah, I think he kind of belongs. Yeah, I think in that D tier, and maybe there's a team below him, maybe not. We'll see. But yeah, I think somewhere there. I think that he's gonna score more points this year. I think he's gonna put together a roster where it's like going into 2026, all of a sudden we're maybe taking him a little bit more seriously. So I think that, yeah, I think he's in kind of that year or two out tier, and we'll figure out what we kind of want to name that. Amro, when you look at McMorrow's roster, how do you feel?
I think D tier is fine. I thought he had more like win now players than he does. I guess it's just Bucky and McMillan. Like I'm expecting. I think McMillan's like locked into that number 2 role now. I don't think Godwin's going to be back in Tampa.
Yeah.
So, like Bucky and McMillan, that's a nice start. And then obviously all these picks. Like, I don't know if he plans on trading like those any of those top 3 picks, but say he stands pat and does what he said he was going to do, which makes a ton of sense, and say take Genty, McMillan, and either Ward or Sanders, like that's a really good place to start, I think. So, I mean, his like again, when we do this again in August, just before the season, it's gonna look entirely different. Like he has 17 picks or something this year. He can't roster all those guys. He's going to be making moves up and down the board or trading for established players. So I'm looking forward to seeing what he does. But as of right now, I think this is kind of where we have to slot him in because there's so much unknown.
Yeah, and like Pete was saying, I mean, there's no question to me that he's locked in. I mean, the guy's tweeting, like good night and thank you at Brian Thomas Jr. I mean, anytime, I follow every single one of my players on Instagram, and it's like anytime they post, whether it's Jordan Addison or Drake London or like anybody like that, like McMorrow is liking those posts. So I mean, he's a
I
best
love
ball
that.
fiend. He's locked in. I know that he's doing his research. So, yeah, I mean, I'm very confident. Like we were kind of talking about with the Zits and investing in the owner. As long as I've always said my one concern is I don't want this to be like McMorrow's gimmick league where it's like, oh, let me try some wacky thing out. But I think that I think he's built up a good treasure chest of picks. I feel like he does actually have flexibility in that where it's like he can trade a bunch of those picks and still have some left over and really be able to fill out a roster. So yeah, I mean I'm confident in him. So yeah, I mean I guess we can't really rank him too high. Like you said, Amaral, I think in August we'll have a much better idea once we can actually see what type of roster he's bringing into the season. But just assuming that he actually fills it out and has a starting lineup and doesn't trade all these to get everybody's 2027 picks or something. I do think that he's going to have a interesting roster. Like I said, kind of pesky. I think he can at least be pesky this year. Um, all right, Pete, you got anybody that you want to throw out there?
Um, I want to pass to see where the next one lands, and that's going to give me a little more feel.
Hmm.
We're in the weeds right now. This is the
Amro,
middle.
you got
Middle's the
anybody
tough.
you're eyeing? Emerald's team's
Di-
still on there. We could always throw that up there.
Um, no, we're not gonna throw that one out there. I got one I think you guys are gonna like. Um, and I'm honestly going back and forth. No, I've got to put
Like
them in
Ray
C
Allen.
tier. I've got to put them in C tier here, but I'm going pins. And I was also thinking about D tier. Like I think this team is going to be in rough shape. Like the quarterback situation's fine. Like he could probably trade Penix and get something else and roll with Mahomes and Daniels, and he has Jamar Chase obviously, but I mean this the rest of this roster is not in good shape at all.
I kind of got to agree with you. I mean, that was a team where I've been looking at them, and it's like, where do they belong? I mean, I guess maybe the discussion is if we want to put them in that D tier, and I think, I at least know where Pete would want to go with it, but I don't know, objectively how he feels. But do we want to put them above or below McMorrow? But I will say, also just based off of what I know, I think that Two Pins might be going into this year looking to maybe tear it down a little bit. I think that there has been some talks about maybe trading one of those quarterbacks. I think that would probably end up being Patrick Mahomes, seeing what they can get. And I kind of hope that happens just because I want to see it. I want to see what Mahomes could get on the open market like that. With people trying to turn him into like their cornerstone piece, especially because he's kind of an interesting one, right? He's kind of in that Brady zone where it's like maybe he's not going to be a top five fantasy quarterback every year, but knowing that you have a guy that's guaranteed to be like QB 10 at worst. That does bring a lot of value, especially in a dynasty format. But yeah, I mean, I think that Two Pins is going to be looking, at more of a down year. So I mean, I'm down to put them in that D tier. I'd probably say to put them above McMorrow. I don't know if you guys agree or disagree. But speak now or forever hold your peace. Pete, what's your read on Two Pins?
Same thing. I agree. I think they went 1 year too many on trying to compete. I think it should have got torn down last year. I mean, they limped into the playoffs this year, and then obviously fell flat on their face when they got there. Um, so I think they're going to be that set them back a little bit. I I probably, as much as I want them in the D tier, I'd probably have them last or maybe even second to last in the C tier. But you're not going to catch me standing on the hill trying to bump them up. So I'm perfectly fine where they're at right now.
I say maybe we leave them there for now, and then as we kind of see, maybe what that C tier turns into, maybe we'll
Yeah.
decide that we want to bump them up. But yeah, I mean, I think we'll keep them ahead of McMorrow for now, with the potential to bump up into that final C tier spot. Pete, did that open anything up for you? Is there now a team that you want to throw out, or should we try and come up with somebody else?
Yeah, no, I feel good now. I'm looking at the teams left, and I'm thinking like, is there a team good enough to put behind Wallace in the B tier? And I don't think it's going to be a popular pick, but I've been a fan of them for a couple of years. I'm going to say the Suns, and I'm going to put them in the B tier behind Wallace.
I think that's fair. I'll put them there for now. Amaral, if you want to talk us down from it. I mean, I agree.
They
They
got a
they
good
have the
team.
running backs.
They got a good team.
That they have the quarterbacks. They're going to get Dak back. I do think that'll be very big for them. And I feel like going into this year, the big question was the tight end spot because they really just didn't have a tight end. Um, you know, Likely really didn't do much. After that first game. I think that they were maybe hoping that that was going to turn into something, but they might have found something with John Smith. They suddenly have one of the best tight ends, at least fantasy wise, in the league. There, Rashad Bateman took a major step forward. Even Quentin Johnson became halfway serviceable. And then they drafted Brian Thomas. A Chain Gibbs is obviously unbelievable. And then they went out and they traded for Jackson Smith and Jigba. Right before he turned into like the best fucking receiver in the league, which is absolutely baffling to me that it happened so quickly. But I still I don't know. I look at this bench. The bench is still brutal. We'll see what Rasheed Rice turns into. They really don't have picks either. I don't know. The more I'm looking at the roster, I feel like definitely behind Wallace. Maybe they get their own tier. We could always create a new tier underneath this if we wanted to. I feel like if we're putting them in that tier though with Wallace, where Wallace has the lineup, And I'd say maybe starting lineup, maybe I'd give the slight edge to the Suns. But when we're looking at the bench, I mean, the Suns really still have no bench, and I'm not really seeing how they're going to add it unless they want to try and make a big splash where they trade one of their big players. So I don't know, Amaral, maybe you can try and sway this one way or the other. Where do you have the Suns?
I would have them a tier below. I would have them
I'm kind
C
of thinking
tier.
so too. I think I'm going to put them a tier below.
I
I'm
think it's
going to
fair.
just what did I just hold on? What did I just do? Okay, hold on. There we go. I'm going to put them a tier below. I'm going to proactively add one more row below because I do think that they kind of belong above some of these other teams. But yeah, I think we'll put them there for now. What was your reasoning, Amro?
I just don't think. I think they have really nice building blocks. We talked about this, like I think during one of the the third or fourth regular season power rankings. Like you mentioned Gibbs and HN, Brian Thomas, Rasheed Rice, JSN. Like they have some really nice building blocks. They have the two quarterbacks with Goff and Prescott. Like one of those guys is probably gonna have a top 6 week in and week out. So that's a good spot to be in. I think they have some really nice pieces. I think I think John Smith's a good player. Like he's obviously not as bad as he showed when he was with the Patriots, but I don't think he's like tight end 4 or whatever the fuck he finished on the year. So
Justice for
like I
Arthur
think
Smith, by the way. Everyone was shitting on him because he wanted to give him reps over Kyle Pitts,
I
but
fucking hate.
he's
I
like
fucking
legitimately
hate
better
Arthur
than Kyle
Smith.
Pitts.
yeah, he was unbelievable. I mean, even we were talking about it earlier when talking about Tyreek and Tua and all that. It's like once Tua came back, he only wanted to throw in the middle of the field between the hash marks, and that meant that A Chain and Johnny were combining for like 20 receptions every game. So maybe he did benefit from that a little bit. We'll see kind of what things turn into, and whether Tyreek stays or goes, and how that offense sort of morphs around things. But I mean, you can't deny it, to end the season, he was unbelievable. Um, all right, we got anything else on the Suns, or we got any other teams? I mean, obviously we got four more left. Um, I kind of want to talk about. Let's do Winspur's team. Let's do Go Tigers. Where do we have them? That was a playoff team. They have
I need a
Burrow.
refresher.
They have Higgins.
Jettis.
Their running backs are not exciting at all. I mean, I think they definitely got to go below the Suns. I mean, I'm going to put them in this tier right now. Whether we add another tier or anything. Pete, how do you feel about Mike Bowen in this roster?
I had this team. I don't know how they made the playoffs. I had them missing the playoffs. I think they were thought of too highly going into the season, and they did prove me wrong. So I'm not respecting them as much as I should. I think they're either the first team in that D tier or the last team in that C tier.
Ah, man, I would have them. They're like neck and neck with the Pins, I think. Like both, neither has a good running back situation. Burr, I think Caleb Williams is gonna be a fine fantasy quarterback. Like if they get a real coach in there, I think it's gonna turn around for him. Burrow. Higgins, like I imagine he's gonna stay in Cincinnati, but we'll see what happens there. They both have, the LSU building block. One has Chase, one has Jefferson. But like Pitts is, whatever, he sucks. You said JSN turning into the best receiver in the league. Like Jerry Judy had that fucking all-time heater
Yeah.
in the middle of the stretch run there. So that sort of carried him, but he like needs a Kenneth Walker injury for to be able to plug Charbonnet and I really
And Charbonnet is like the one playable guy on his bench. I mean, Mooney was
yeah.
like great in the first half of the year, and then he just kind of didn't really do too much in the second half, and ended up dealing with some injuries and stuff. But now that I see it, I think I'm gonna bump two pins up here with them. I kind of feel like they're sort of like this new tier here. Yeah, I like what you said, Amaral, where like they kind of are like similar teams there when it comes to roster construction, where they have their quarterbacks. I mean, there's still some questions around Caleb Williams. I mean, one, he's like he's probably the most polarizing player when it comes to Twitter discussions and stuff because people either think that he was god awful or people trying to argue that he was actually like the best quarterback in the league or something like that. And as always, it's somewhere in the middle. I mean, he was literally QB 16, it looks like, so that's truly in the middle when you're talking about 32 NFL teams and starting quarterbacks and everything. But yeah, I mean, I think we need to see some development with him. I think he's got a lot of stuff to work on. We'll see what coach they end up bringing in. But yeah, I mean, I just think those running backs are pretty brutal. I mean, Najee Harris, of course, people got to respect it. I mean, people are, oh, Najee Harris, only guy to score, run for 1,000 yards in each of the last 4 years. That shows that 1,000 yards doesn't matter. It's like, I mean, he's the only guy to do it. You know what? We can't respect that. Same thing. Justice for Mike Evans, right? Everybody's pissed at, oh, they forced him the ball to get him 1,000 yards. Okay, well, he did it in 15 games. How about we give him some credit for that? Or it's, oh, Mike Evans, he's barely a Hall of Famer. He shouldn't get it. The guy just did something that only Jerry Rice has done. Why can't we just be like, that's pretty damn cool? I know everybody loves to shit on the graphic where it's like, what was it? It's like Michael Jordan, LeBron, Larry Bird, and then Thad Young or whatever. And it's like, I understand that they lowered the threshold for him where they made it like 9 points instead of like 25 points. But it's like, you know what? If you can find a category where it's only me, LeBron, Michael Jordan, and Larry Bird, I'd say that's pretty damn cool. If only the four of us have accomplished something. So, let's celebrate the small accomplishments for people as well. So Najee Harris, he's a good building block. He might be on a good team there as far as being like an RB2 or an RB3. But yeah, he needs like a strong running back option. Kyle Pitts stinks, and Njoku's just getting old. Who knows what the quarterback situation is? Yeah, I mean, and that bench is just god awful. So I mean, I do think that he kind of belongs below the Suns because that lineup I don't think has the same firepower that starting lineup, and that bench is just bad, and they have no picks. So I don't know,
I
Pete. You
like
got
it.
any objections to that? You think
No,
that's where they belong?
I think we found it. I like it.
All right, all right. Hmm.
I want to take a shot at a best friend of mine.
All right.
Nothing I haven't said to Ryan Simcoe's face before, but I think his team's horrible. Decimated running back room, no bench whatsoever. The one thing he does have going for him is he's obviously got Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, Drake May. I know he is locked in on moving one of those quarterbacks to fill out the rest of his room. I don't really know what his return's going to be. He's from feeling it out, feels like he's kind of asking for the moon as he should and work his way down from there. But as it stands right now, I don't like this roster. I haven't liked this roster for a year. I went out of my way last offseason to trade for his 26th first round pick because I think it's going to be top three. And I'm not like super confident he's going to be able to move one of those quarterbacks and get everything he's asking for. I mean, we haven't seen Olave put up above like a wide receiver 24 season. Sure, McConkey balled out, Brock Bowers balled out, but he's got no running back room. He's starting Xavier Legette in the wide receiver in like the flex spot, again with nothing on his bench. He's got to fill out a full running back room, and then McConkey's got to repeat that season of a top wide receiver for him to be even like in a competing conversation. So I think this is a bottom team right now. We'll see what happens when he moves that quarterback, but I'm feeling really good about having his 26th pick, and I think he's in that 2 pins tier.
So I've been a bit of a Simcoe defender. George, when he was on the show, he was talking a lot of shit on Simcoe's team. And, I mean, I'm not going to stand here and be like, oh, like this team's like actually good or something like that. Like, yeah, I mean, his team, especially last year, was, one of the worst in the league. But, I have to defend him because I feel like he's in a similar position to where my team was a year or two ago, where he has the young building blocks that he wants. He does not have much in terms of picks, but he does have a couple players that he could maybe trade away and get a haul. And I mean, honestly, like I don't think that Herbert's going to get like a team changing haul in return. I'm not quite sure Drake May gets that yet either. I mean, he's a rookie that played half the year, and his team still stinks pretty bad right now. I feel like if he wants to try and turn one of those quarterbacks into a way to fill out the rest of his roster, it has to be Josh Allen. I don't know what that return is. I mean, I was joking the other day. I feel like he's just going to chase a deal with McMorrow that he's never going to get because McMorrow is the only guy that really has picks that can trade. I mean, I don't. The thing is, I just don't know what that price is. But I feel like if he wants to try and use any of his players to fill out the rest of his roster, which is really his only option, unless he wants to sit around and wait until 2027, it has to be Josh Allen. So I feel like that's what he has to do. We'll see what that market ends up becoming. But yeah, I mean, he still needs to. I mean, he's got a long ways to go. I mean, I didn't really realize that he was kind of leaning on Xavier Legette like that. I do think Olave will be fine when he comes back. McConkey was unbelievable. Brock Bowers, best rookie tight end season ever. And then, of course, he's always going to have two of those quarterbacks. I mean, maybe he trades Josh Allen and then he uses another quarterback to tear down a little bit and get somebody solid and then just get a few more pieces. So I mean, I think that the moves are there. The opportunities are there to kind of answer some of those questions about his team, but it's going to be tough. He's going to need to find a buyer, and I'm not confident that the buyer is always going to be there. And then at the same time, we also just have to see how it fills out. So I mean, I don't know, Pete. You wanted to call him out. Where do you want to put him? Do you want to put him with McMorrow?
Yeah, I'd put him right above McMorrow, to be honest. Until we see that quarterback move, and sure, the opportunity is there, but as of now, I think he's a bottom three team.
I think that's right, and I think yeah, I think he has to go above McMorrow because we still have to see what McMorrow ends up doing. He really doesn't have a roster yet, and I think what gives Simcoe that bump is the fact that he has those quarterbacks, and
Yeah,
those are
elite quarterbacks.
having that can really make up, especially with the style that they play. Having Josh Allen and then having Drake May, be running guys. I mean, Herbert can run a bit himself too. So having upside added, whether it's mega upside from Josh Allen or guys that could put up 30, 40 yards in a game and maybe sneak in a touchdown like Drake May and then Justin Herbert. Having that definitely does make your team just initially much stronger from the get go. So, Amaral, I mean, what do you think? Do you think that's about the right rank for Simcoe's team?
Yep. Yep. Right there. And I also think like it would require a bit of projection based on, kind of assuming what McMorrow is going to do. But I think again, by the time August rolls around, I think there's probably going to be a pretty good argument that McMorrow's team's better than Simcoe's.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's fair. All right, we got two teams left. Emerald, do you want to do yours?
Sure, let's do it.
Pete, where would you put Emerald's team? I'd like to hear your thoughts.
I got him in the C tier, right behind the Suns.
I like it. I'll put him there for now, and we can discuss. I'll give my read on. I mean, yeah, I mean, I think that's more than fair. I mean, you have quarterbacks. I mean, one Baker Mayfield is kind of a disrespected fringe MVP guy. He's really getting zero buzz for it, which I think is a bit ridiculous. I understand that it is more of a two-horse race right now, but it's I feel like he just was dropped out of the conversation way too early. But I mean, Malik Neighbors is unbelievable. I mean, you really had quite a come up with your running backs between Chase Brown, Rico Dowdle, and then you traded for Tyrone Tracy, who ended up getting that starting job and being great in that position as well. But I mean, you got good receivers. You got Dobbs. I mean, I'm looking at it now. You have Brandon Ayuk coming back, and then Sam Laporta even as just like a foundational building block piece at the tight end position. So I mean, you have like a starting lineup that can go out and compete right now. And I think that's always kind of been the sentiment with your team, whether it was last year or the year before, where it's like we saw the pieces, and you didn't. 2 years ago, maybe you didn't really have that strong of players in like the flex spot, but then you got guys in the flex spot and you answered the question at running back. And now going into this year, I think that you should have higher expectations, or all of us should, for your team, than we've had in years past. So I mean, I think that's solid place. I mean, right now, what does that put you? That puts you at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That puts you right in the sixth spot. I mean, I think that's honestly pretty fair. I think that's about where you're going to be. You can expect to compete, whether it's we'll see kind of how things play out when it's the two conferences and winning and everything like that. But I mean, I think that you're at least going to be in the conversation for those wild card spots. So I think that's a pretty good ranking. How do you feel about that, Amaral?
Yeah, I think I'm right in that range. I'm just hoping that two of the three backs out of Brown, Dowdle, and Tracy can maintain those starting roles. I think Chase Brown feels pretty safe. Like he was fucking awesome for Cincinnati down the stretch. Dowdle, I'm a little unsure of. Like I don't know if
I think Dowdle might be a free agent too.
yeah, and I really don't think Jerry's going to be able to resist that Genty urge when
Yeah.
he's sitting there on the board. That also feels like it's becoming more obvious, so I don't know if that's going to happen just because I feel like every mock has Genty to the Cowboys. But
Yeah.
um, yeah, I like my team. Like I don't know. I wish Tajay Spears got a little bit more playing time this year. He was really good down the stretch. I don't think there's like a I don't think there's like some enormous talent gap between Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears either. So hopefully he gets a little bit more work next year. Tua's health's always going to be a question mark, but I like where I'm at. I think I have uh, probably a top three dynasty receiver in Neighbors. Would you agree with that? Behind Jefferson and Chase, I think he's
I think that's
right in
more
that
than fair.
conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I'd,
100%.
I'd say if we're talking
100%.
pure dynasty, I'd say comfortably top five, and I think that he definitely belongs, in that, sort of discussion, like you said, in that third spot. And then,
Yeah,
I mean,
so I
also
mean,
just the fact that you have the fourth pick, the third and the fourth and the seventh and the second round, and then, two more third rounders as well. Um, I mean, you have plenty of opportunity to just continue to add to this team. I think your team's in a really good spot where it's like, yeah, I mean, I think maybe right now we have to sort of be, a little more reserved with it. We can't put you too high. And I mean, also you just have like five like deserving teams ahead of you. But I mean, I think that it's sort of like what you were saying about McMorrow's team, where come August we could be looking at your team a lot different and saying like, holy shit, like this is kind of the next team. But I do think that you are that team that's like poised to take that step up.
yeah, I mean, I like where I'm at. I got 7 picks this year. I have my full slate of picks moving forward in 26 and 27. So I think I'm in pretty good shape right now.
All right, one more team left. That is TussockyGnome. That is Frank Hopkins. I feel like it's sort of an interesting discussion, right? I mean, it's a roster that was very uninspiring last year. But they have some fantastic pieces. You're looking at it, and they got AJ Brown, they got Trey McBride. Marvin Harrison was maybe a little polarizing this year, but I still think he's a very desirable and good dynasty piece there. Juwan Jennings had a huge breakout this season, and then it kind of falls off a bit after that. Cortland Sutton definitely sort of revived his dynasty value, but there's not really too much in terms of picks. They have two second rounders. They have their fourth rounder. They do have JJ McCarthy on the IR. We'll see what that turns into, whether he's the starting quarterback for the Vikings, whether it's next year or the starting quarterback in waiting, or if he just gets traded to a different team, which I think might be sort of most ideal for him at this point, or at least for his fantasy owners. So, definitely a lot of fat that could be trimmed off of this roster. I think that there needs to be a little bit of turnover. Definitely has some interesting pieces. But I do think this is going to be kind of sort of a middle ground team. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'd say if I were to just do rankings for purely next year, I'd definitely bump Big Brain a little bit higher than they are right now, and I'd maybe put Frank's team right next to them. I don't know if we kind of have that same long term outlook for Frank's team, and if they belong at the bottom there too, or if maybe he belongs maybe somewhere in this D or new tier rankings. I don't know. Pete, what do you got?
I think I either have him at the end of new or the top of D. I'd be cool with either one. Yeah, that's a tough call, but I think I got him in both sides. Again, a team with opportunity.
I was kind of eyeing the top of D.
Yeah, I like. I think I like that more.
That's where I was looking to, top of
Yeah,
D. Yeah.
it's an uphill battle for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I like I said, at the top of the show, I think Frank's going to be the perfect addition. I mean, he did say to me, he's like, "Damn, I have no first round picks," and I'm like, "Oh, maybe I didn't mention that to him when I told him about the opening or anything." But I mean, he does have great picks. I mean, or great players, I should say. I mean, AJ Brown, if he wants to trade him, I think he can absolute haul. I mean, Marvin Harrison. I mean, if I'm a buyer, I would definitely be looking for an opportunity to try and buy him low this year. I think he's going to bounce back and be great. I mean, and he had a totally fine rookie season. I mean, people are acting like he put up like 200 yards or something. He still had like an 800-yard season. He still scored a decent handful of touchdowns. He's very good, but of course he was not like that explosive level that a guy like Malik Neighbors brings. But that was also kind of the scouting report on these guys, anyways. Was like Marv was like a lot more smoother, and his game looked slower, even if he didn't necessarily play slow. And Neighbors was a guy that could just break it open at any time. And I think that we kind of saw how that translated. But I mean, I think Marv's going to be just fine. So I think that's some good pieces there. Trey McBride, of course, like I said too, but definitely some work to do. We'll see what that Brock Purdy contract situation turns into. We'll see what JJ McCarthy turns into, and then guys like Rodgers and Kirk Cousins were interesting pieces going into last year, and now I think that their value is sort of tanked completely. But those can still maybe be salvageable next year. We'll see what that is, but yeah, I think that's about where they belong. So that's all 12 teams. I don't know. Do we want to go top to bottom? Maybe here we could kind of jump around the board. We got to give some names to these teams. I kind of want to start at the bottom. What do we got for Big Brain? Are they just hell? We always like to
That's hell.
incorporate a hell
I,
tier.
lo-
That's
I
hell,
love the
baby.
hell. I love the hell
Yeah.
tier. Yeah.
I'm gonna go, yeah, hell. Hell. They're in hell. Uh yeah, let's just go bottom up. What do we got this next tier? Just work to be done? Work in progress? Something like that?
It's an uphill battle. Uphill. I don't know.
Uh,
It is kind of a tier of opportunity. I mean, you've got the shits McMurrow with all the picks, the
I like that.
quarterbacks.
I'm gonna stop right there. I like that. The tier of opportunity. Is it opportunity? Now all of a sudden I don't know how to spell shit.
That looks right to me. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
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 It's one of those words. All of a sudden, it's, like when you like think about breathing and you suddenly like forget how to breathe. It was like that. So I just had one of those moments.
Yeah.
All right. This next tier.
that's the I think that's the classic purgatory tier.
Yeah, that is the Yep, purgatory. All right. I think this is an interesting one. Trying to think.
Did we
Who's
used to
like
toss the foundation? Did we used to toss that around?
We've used that one before for sure.
what as far as like these teams having a good foundation?
Yeah.
To me, I almost just want to call it the wild card. Like these just feel like wild card teams to me.
Yeah, one way or another. Yeah,
Could
that's
go up,
fair.
could go- Yeah. Okay, I like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, these two. Like I look at these logos, I think of these rosters. These look like teams that get in as the 5 and the 6 seed. All of a sudden, win their first matchup, and you're like, oh shit! Like now they're just one game away from the championship. Yeah, I'm gonna go wild card because I mean, and I feel like that kind of works both ways too. Where it's like, I mean, I don't know. I mean, like they could just have bad luck and suddenly be the 7th seed and get screwed or something. But yeah, I mean, I think like if I had to draw out a playoff bracket right now, that's like kind of how I would rank it. I mean, they are the 5 and
Yeah.
the 6 as well. So, all right, Wallace's solo tier. I mean, what was our read on him? I mean, he's got
So
a
I would like how I would like rattle off these next three in order. I would say Wallace is in the hunt. Tier A is contenders, and then Pete's the favorite. Is kind of how I would break that down.
I think
I don't
that's
know if you
fair.
guys.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in the
Because I
hunt.
am in the S tier alone, if I may have the privilege to name it, and it's a synonym for the favorite, I'd like it to be the number two and then Pete. Two Pete.
Okay, yeah,
Like I'm chasing this back-to-back chip. Never been
yeah.
done before in the league. Two
Okay,
Pete.
so wait, so Wallace is in the hunt
In the hunt. Yeah.
because I'm trying to think. Because I feel I kind of want to incorporate something like because I feel like Wallace like he's in a bounce back spot. I feel like he
He
went into
definitely
last year with like major expectations. I almost feel like the Houston Texans. Like he's like the current Houston Texans.
a hell of a bounce back for sure.
Last year he went into like he went in and it was like holy shit like Wallace's team has arrived like this is what they are like they are like the team going forward. They came into this year maybe had a little bit harder of a schedule than they had last year, a little more prime time coverage, all that stuff, and maybe they disappointed a little bit of a slump when it came to the success. I mean now all of a sudden, they have the team, they have the pieces, just like the Texans do. They're always going to have Stroud, they're always going to have Nico Collins. They're in a spot for a bounce back. I mean, maybe in the hunt is still just like the appropriate one, because I can't really think of anything better for that. Let's just go within the hunt.
I was trying to think of something a little better because like usually in the hunt, like when you see like the graphics on CBS or whatever, in the hunt's usually like the like shitty fringe teams that are
Yeah, it's
like
kind of like behind the wild card, right?
yeah, they're usually like 7-7, just like mediocre. So it's probably a bit disrespectful to Wallace to maybe have it in the hunt, but I just couldn't think of something that's above in the hunt but below contenders.
I'm gonna go. Let's go. I'm gonna go with what I said. I'm gonna say bounce back season. How about that? All
Bounce
right.
back season.
I like it. He's done it before. Just needs to do it again.
We said the contenders.
Contenders, yeah.
I think I'm going to go back on 2P, by the way. It sounded a lot better in my head. It's just so trying to be 3P, but it's not. So I'm going back on that.
All right. So what do you want to call it?
I think I'm just going to stick with the Vision. Maybe it's the Vision 2.0. Maybe it's Champ. I think the Vision holds true still. It still is the Vision. The Vision 2 point. The Vision 2 sounds good to me.
Yeah, right. And then we can just we'll still have a little bit of the 2-peak thing.
Yeah, yeah.
All right. There you have it. Starting at the top, it is the Vision 2 tier that is Slippery Pete on his own. The contenders, which would be the Zits and the Strokers. Bounce back season with Wallace and I Love My Mom. With a wild card tier, which has the Most Athletic Sons and Sfogliatella. The Purgatory tier with Go Tigers and 2 Pins. The Tier of Opportunity, which I really like that name. That has TussockyGnome, that has Lamar in the shits, or Joshy in the shits, sorry. McMorrow's team, and then the Hell tier, a classic pillar of this tier exercise, which has Big Brain LLC. I will stop sharing my screen. Pete, it's great to have you on. Great to have you back on camera. Congratulations on your championship, Amaral. It's a pleasure as always. Thank you guys for coming on. And I don't know, we'll be back. I would like to get some draft content in. Amaral, maybe we can discuss things like that. We'll try and work some people in or something like that. But yeah, let's maybe get some draft content in. We'll see what happens. And like I said, the trade market opens on February 1st. So I'm very much looking forward to that. Thank you to everybody, and we will see you on the next episode.